everyone. Welcome back to the True to Form podcast. I am your host, Audrey Neff. I'm very excited about this week's guest, who is Tracy Olson. So we actually met through a mutual friend of ours in the industry, Hillary Small. So I'm very grateful for the introduction with you, Tracy. I'm very excited to have this episode with you today. But before we jump in to today's conversation, I'm going to read a little bit about Tracy just so you guys kind of get a taste for her background, but then we'll definitely get into her journey in aesthetic medicine. And she's done some very impressive things. So I'm very much looking forward to this episode. But in 2014, she transitioned from a successful career in the business sector to take ownership of Youthtopia Med Spa. Since then, she has introduced the latest innovations in anti-aging, fat loss, and skin tightening in the North Fulton area. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Management from the University of Maryland, graduating or also attended the University of Georgia. She has visionary leadership. Youthtopia has actually emerged as one of North Atlanta's premier med spas, consistently recognized as the best med spa by Appen Media Group. I'm not going to continue reading this, but goodness, Tracy, you have a very, very impressive bio. And the other thing I want to add before we jump in here is, and we're definitely going to be talking about this today, is she founded the Aesthetic Injector Academy in 2023. So this year, which has become a groundbreaking online platform that offers comprehensive training for medically licensed injectors, setting new standards in the world of aesthetic medicine, which is something our industry needs so badly. So obviously there's a huge gap there that you filled, Tracy, and we'll definitely go into that. But first of all, just reading your bio, something that I love about this is you came from the business world. And I feel like so often in this industry, something that I think hinders a lot of growth for, practices overall is a lot of them came from the medical world, and running a business is a completely different ballgame. So I think it is so incredible to see that you actually came from that sector and then emerged into the aesthetic industry. So obviously there's a lot of things I want to touch on today, given your background, but first of all, welcome to the True to Form podcast. I'm very grateful and honored to have you here, and welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so very much for having me. I think when I hear you read that bio, it does sound like I've done quite a bit, but I've always felt like I'm still trying to find what's next, especially in this ever-changing industry. It's just, there's a lot going on in this industry, but and you have to point out, go Dogs. I have to throw that out there. With the University of Georgia, we're so excited about our team this year. And when I hear UGA, I think go Dogs.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Love it. And no, and I totally agree. It's a very fast paced industry that's constantly evolving, and with the growth and the market size getting bigger, there's always new gaps for us to, attempt to fill and things like that. So first of all, give us like a background of you. Obviously, you've had this really awesome journey, and I love that you came from the business side. I very much am looking forward to this conversation today. So first of all, just give our audience of listeners a little bit about you, where you came from, your background, and how it kind of landed you in the ever-changing world of aesthetic medicine.
Certainly. So I think when I was first in the arena of maybe looking to get into a med spa, I was currently working for corporate finance with a big bank here in Atlanta. And once I was going to get my medical spa services, my Botox and stuff, that gentleman asked me to partner with him and open another location, which he's still a very successful business person and owner all across the country with his medical spas. And what happened 10 years ago was, as I got my foot out the door of corporate finance, thank God, because that was such a brutal industry here in Atlanta. But my partnership with that gentleman didn't work out. But once you have one foot out the door and kind of into a new career path, you're stuck. You got to decide which way to go. So Youthtopia Med Spa was up for sale, and it wasn't something like I was going to leave my 6-figure salary job and corporate finance and just go out and buy a med spa. But I was forced to either stay in the finance industry or do that, because once I learned and wrote my business plan and studied the industry, and again, this was 10, 11 years ago, I knew there was growth. I'm looking for what can I invest my monies in, my heart, my soul, my energies and efforts in, and get a continued return on my investment. And all the indices pointed to the med spa, right? This industry is growing so much. As you know, on your podcast that I listened to, it's a great place to be in. So I bought Youthtopia. When I bought it, it was just dramatically different than what it is now. I'm in downtown Alpharetta, which is a northern suburb of Atlanta. And when I bought Utopia, it had been open already 5 years. So we're 15 years in this Alpharetta area. And not long ago, well, let me just say that when I needed an injector, so with this industry growing, as you know, Audrey, with like Botox, it used to be you wouldn't want your tennis teammates to know, you certainly didn't tell your mother that you were going to get Botox because it was crazy. Now it's just a household name, and dermal fillers are becoming that way as our industry grows. And of course, there's other modalities for skin, you know, lasers and resurfacing, and there's so many other options that come with med spa. But when I would need an injector, let's say I was growing my business and I needed to go from an injector 3 days a week to an injector 5 days a week to maybe 2 injectors, one part-time, one full-time, I would let my reps know, and I would have 5 or 6 outstanding qualified resumes, people who have been injecting 6, 7 years. Now, when I tell my reps, I need an injector because I have 5 injectors 5 days a week and I'm just growing and growing, or 5 days a week, there's none out there. There are no qualified, skilled injectors. And everyone seems to want to get into the industry, but there's a giant gap on how they can bridge from their daytime job at the NICU, or they're working at the Children's Hospital, or they're in the ER, the OR, and they're in orthopedics and they're brilliant. They just can't get into injecting aesthetic medicine because there's not a real clear pathway for them. So my husband and I were thinking, are we going to open a second and third location, which is very trending and very popular. And what I've learned after 10 years, I could do it. I wouldn't say with my eyes closed because it's a tough industry, but I know what to avoid and what pitfalls to avoid. I could do it. But we would still be facing in the industry a challenge to educate and train injectors. So instead, I thought I'll open an online academy that's certified and teach people how to inject to help our industry continue to grow. And I opened Aesthetic Injector Academy. It's fully accredited. I worked hard to get that accreditation. So whether you're an RN, NP, PA, or an MD, and you're looking to get your accredited, your CEs, continuing education credits, you now have a place to go that's going to teach you, I think, the full suite of what you need to know from facial anatomy, safety protocols, neuromodulators, dermal fillers, everything FDA approved and on label, of course, for the accreditation. You can't be off label. But yeah, I did it. I launched it this year. It took me about 1.5 years, almost 2 years to build the content. And I'm just real excited to be able to share it with you and your listeners, because I do think that the industry recognizes we need this. And now it's a matter of getting the word out there and letting people know what a great resource is available to them if they want to learn how to enter into this industry. That was a long way to answer your first question.
No, I love it. I appreciate the detail, and I know our listeners do too. And I really, really enjoyed listening to your background, how you came from corporate finance, and then you kind of were at this turning point where like, okay, I either stay in finance, which, you know, you mentioned was a bit brutal, or, you know, the med spa industry is growing exponentially, and I have this opportunity to buy an existing med spa that's been open for 5 years. And so now it's been 10 years. You guys have 5 injectors, 5 days a week. And you, once again, saw a gap. Obviously, when you're looking to scale and grow your locations, obviously you have all the business acumen and expertise in order to do so. But then there's that other kind of segment of this shortage of skilled, qualified nurse injectors in the industry. And I mean, it's the same conversation I hear from everybody that owns practices. It's so hard to find qualified injectors. And there are a lot of people that you just touched on, or you mentioned this, that are trying to break into this industry. I mean, I have so many friends of mine that are moving out of the hospital setting and they're trying to break into aesthetics, and it's hard. So just hearing this, because this is a conversation I have with people that I know on a personal level. And so I just think it's so incredible that, first of all, you saw the gap, which is a huge gap. And, it took you 1 to 2 years to build, but you eventually launched the Aesthetic Injector Academy. So let's go into this now, because obviously and I'll let you speak to this, but what was kind of, because and I know you'll agree with this, but there is a lot of gray in this industry when it comes, because there's no like certification really
Right.
for aesthetics, and it's like this complicated like enigma in the industry. And so I love that you invested time, energy, and effort into doing this. But first of all, talk a little bit about that, because it's something that we hear all the time, that there's no real official certification for this vertical of elective medicine, and then kind of how that, if that had anything to do with your decision in launching this venture.
I mean, you hit it. I mean, that's where the gap starts. If you go to medical school and you get your license, they're not teaching yet. I mean, if I could wave a wand, I think that the medical schools out there should be offering aesthetic medicine as a avenue in the educational process. Well, I can't fix that. I wish I could, and I wish I could talk to someone, because if you're looking to, a lot of medical professionals are actually going to school now to get into this industry. It wasn't that way before, right? And maybe 5 years from now, there'll be actual degrees that you can get, or enough courses in school that you can take. But if you're that medical, let's say you're an RN and you're working at the hospital, you can't quit your day job to go learn. And there's no certification. There's no, like when I interview potential injectors, oh gosh, if I've heard it once, I've heard it so many times. They did a weekend class and they injected one half of one phase of one model with neuromodulators, and they didn't have any 2-week follow-up. They haven't been able to go back and inject anymore because it was just a weekend class, and they had to go back to their day job. I, as a med spa, and not being an injector myself, I don't have the luxury of bringing on 3 newborns, I call them newborns, 2 new people to the industry and teach them in the room with me. So I have to rely on my reps to help me, but my current injectors as well. And I have to train them. I've gotten to where, like a lot of the med spas that are multiple all across the United States, they've got 70, 80, 90, 100 injectors, and they're multiple med spas, and they're relying on the current injectors to help onboard and teach the new ones, which is better than some of the other scenarios where they've done a weekend workshop, they have a certificate of completion, but that doesn't certify them to know facial anatomy, safety protocols. What do you do with the vascular occlusion? What are the policies? Where is my medical director? What goes into being a good skilled injector, and what do you do in case of an emergency? So I found that this online course is really an excellent way for someone to understand the foundational basics that they need before they go to a weekend workshop. I've attended many of them, and I've seen hundreds of trainings over the years that I pay for to have my injectors always stay on top of the latest techniques as well as the latest products, because as we've all discussed, it's an ever-changing and growing field. But when you don't have a clear understanding of the basic facial anatomy, and no one's teaching you that consistently through like a medical, almost like a schooling, like the academy, it's hard for it to resonate. So I think that the foundation, the basics are the key. The gap is going to be hard to solve until I think some people can partner with the idea that they're going to do nighttime classes. How do you train somebody who's just trying to get into the industry without and afford to pay them? So I think plastics and derms are a good avenue for the new injectors out there, because they do get to shadow and they do get to watch, and they're able to be paid, because those bigger practices have the money for that. The problem is a lot of those injectors who shadow a plastic surgeon for 2 years don't really get to get their hands on it. The surgeons prefer them in the OR. They like to be watched, and have the audience, so it's tough to really let them get their hands on the product. So I'm hoping that with the school, starting, then it'll morph into more, perhaps workshops, partnering with other workshops across the country. Because, a lot of it is also state regulated, right? RNs
Yep.
versus NPAs. But
Yeah.
that gap is real. That there's a way to bridge it, and this AIA is going to be the one of the steps across that bridge.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's just it's first of all just being. I've been in this industry almost 10 years, so probably a little bit less than you have. But just I I just think it's really cool what you're doing, because it is so needed, and it's just these massive gaps, and these are things that can hinder the industry in terms of growth and things like that as well. And yeah, everything does vary on a state by state basis too. So people need to realize that when they are trying to break into this industry, RNs can only inject in certain states. In other states, they still not can. Like I'm in Florida. In Florida, RNs cannot inject.
You need
You
a
have to.
doctor. You need a doctor.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that
Versus,
the key with this academy is, and is seeking and getting and obtaining the accreditation, is you can be in Texas, California, Florida, wherever you are, you log in, you can get up to 20 CEs. It even includes 5 CEs for pharmacology, which most PAs need. And it's hard to get. You've got to either attend a weekend workshop or go fly to Miami and pay for hotel and airfare. It could be very expensive to continue with your education. So this being accredited across the country allows you to be in Arkansas or California or Florida or Georgia and get that foundational education and then tick it off of your CE list. And I think that, moving into that foundational education with a workshop, or when you're interviewing someone, it helps that they have the foundational understanding. I mean,
yeah.
it's scary, like you said too, with the industry's demand. The way Allergan, MERS, and Galderma are, clearly the more you buy, the better your savings are. And I think that even my reps, they've got this little panicked feeling in their eyes. You see it when they're like, hey, my quarter's coming, or the end of the year's here. Are you able to buy $75,000 worth of product to help me hit my quota? And you're like, yeah, if you can find me 5 injectors to put it in someone's face. And they all feel the pinch too, because their goals keep going up, because COVID was good to our industry. And it's just hard. It's hard to find someone who's skilled enough to do it. And it's a risk. I think when I interview people, when I talk to other med spa owners, people in my industry, and you hear how quickly someone's being trained and then in a room with the client, it's scary. We need to fill the gap, right? Let's get them smarter and trained.
Yeah, definitely. And just on that topic too, like there's always going to be bad actors out there, whether they're or some horrible complication happens, it makes news, like whatever it is, like things happen, whether it was, I don't want to use the word innocent, but whether it was there were good intentions behind it, but something else happened, or whether it was someone that just kind of completely disregarded the like regulations and things like that, and they were doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Overall, these are things that are not good for our industry either, because it just gives our industry honestly a worse reputation, which can affect the consumer sentiment around getting aesthetic treatments as well. And then it can also result in overregulation and things like that, which is just going to affect everybody from a growth standpoint. So I love hearing that from you, because I totally agree with that. So in terms of, because obviously you guys are taking, from what it sounds like, a pretty comprehensive approach in terms of training people on how to get into this industry, facial anatomy, safety, complications, things like that. So I think it'd be really awesome, because I'm sure we have tons of our listeners who are listening to this and they're like, this sounds like something I need to go to. I need to refer a friend of mine to go to, whatever it may be. We have a wide listener database. So I think it'd be cool if we could actually go into a little bit more detail around like the courses and maybe like the time frame of how long each level or module or course, whatever terminology you want to use. I think it'd be really awesome if you could kind of actually unpack that for us.
Great. I'm so happy to share it, because when I first started this project, I really wasn't sure. My angles and my approaches on how to come to a completed curriculum really changed and morphed as I got into it. So at first I was thinking, you know, we're going to train and we're going to film someone training, excuse me, we're going to film a trainer and then translate that information into written content. But I backtracked that after a lot of efforts, and I realized what I need to do from what medical professionals I think are used to is I have to make it clearly written didactic content. So I have written the different coursework. So for example, I have 3, 5, 7, and 20 CE curriculums available. And what I did is I took each course, like the history of aesthetic medicine is one, and then maybe the history and FDA approval and uses of neuromodulators. And again, you got to stay agnostic with the product for accreditation. So you might hear us say Botox, it might be written, but we're not teaching to Botox. It just kind of naturally comes out, right? But we teach the history and foundation of neuromodulators, the history and FDA approval of dermal fillers, mid-face, cheek, lip, jawline, right? And we get into, again, facial anatomy, and we really dive heavy into facial anatomy and all the risks that come into it. And we've written all this coursework. And then I had a film crew come in and we filmed it. It took us 3 different filming sessions, and we literally filmed my trainer teaching an injector how to inject. And so you have the written content and it's backed up with video content. So not only are you going to read 10,000 words of facial anatomy and take a quiz, and after that quiz, you take the next chapter, and then at the end, you take your final. Each of those sections comes with video content. So you're watching someone draw in someone's face, you're watching someone talk about potential areas to avoid if you're using a cannula versus a needle. You have that visual. I know that when I was in school at Georgia, I had to sit, you know, I need multiple influences to learn. I have to read the content. I read the content out loud, which bugged my family to death. I go to the course, I go to the classroom, and I'm writing notes, I'm reading the professor what they're writing, and that helped me get A's in college because I need all those things. So thinking about what was the best way to have this content well received and understood, because it's so important, I thought the video content is going to be a really good enhancement to reinforce that to the learners. So again, you have the written content, you have the video portion of it, but and then you have your quiz, and then of course the final exam that gets your certificate to submit to your board for your CEs. And in the end, if you were to do the whole 20 curriculum, there's other things like tools of the trade, the art of the consultation, different content that you need or that you'll benefit from to be successful as an aesthetic injector. But I would say if you're going to take this, if you're working and you're going to take this course, it might take you 3 weeks online. It depends on how dedicated you are to your time. If you have small children, or if you're just trying to learn, you might be able to knock it out in a couple of weeks. But it's pretty heavy. I mean, even my medical director, she's taking it, and she goes, which one did I miss? You know, there's a few tough questions in there. They need to be tough though, right?
Yeah.
And it is, again, it's all FDA approved and cleared for that accreditation. Our goal in the future is to add some other content for just continuing ed. Kind of once you've completed your course and you've got your certificate of completion, there's access to other videos that are perhaps a little more advanced than the FDA approved on label, but let's be honest, the basics is where we need to start.
Yeah. So is all of this online, or do you guys have on-site events?
It's all
as of now. It's okay. Very, very cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I think everybody is saying, oh my God, this is amazing. When can I come to your workshop? And I'm not trying to compete with workshops. And I think that's why I reach out to some of the schools that are out there, the weekend warrior workshops, and just say, I'm just trying to think that this is a stepping stone. So after they've taken this online course, when they're in your building or they're in your classroom and you're talking facial anatomy, they have a better understanding of it. Because they're not necessarily, unless they went to school in their medical school for ENT or something, they might not know all the facial anatomy. But yeah, it is online. A lot of people are approaching me for workshops or affiliations with other workshops. I'm just trying to stay in my lane and get this going so people understand that I'm not competing with anyone. It's
Yeah.
just good foundational basics for people that are looking to get in the industry and earn their CEs while doing it.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like this is what I love so much about it is that it is all online because everyone that's trying to break into this industry, they all have other jobs, as you mentioned already. So whether they're an OR nurse, whatever it is, it, making it online just makes it so much more convenient and breaks down any barriers. And I think it's also cool is you're not competing with the other workshops that are out there because you're offering this whole other avenue that just enhances the training that they may get later on if they go to one of the schools and things like that at one of their on-site events. So what I love about this is that it was a gap. You came in, you filled it. There's a need, and it benefits everybody. It benefits the students. It benefits other, schools that they may go to for further training and things like that. That's actual hands-on. And the next thing I want to go into because you talked about one of the courses you guys teach is the art of the consultation. I loved hearing that. So let's go into this because I'm super excited to hear this because obviously you and me both, we all know the value of the patient consultation, and you can that is either an opportunity for a phenomenal patient experience that'll make you a lot of money, or it's a opportunity where you can lose all of that. So I think it would be really awesome if you could kind of tell us like what is included in the training and the teaching around the module of the art of the consultation.
I do love that we were able to add that in because it's such an important part of being successful in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to build your reputation around your skill set as you're a partner in their journey. I like to call it the anti-aging industry because this isn't plastic surgery. This is dermal fillers, neuromodulators, but also skin modalities. So oftentimes, well, you all know when someone comes in and say, "I just want to look like this," they want what
We all do.
they think their mind is a facelift. So when you're doing the consult, the art of it is the listening portion.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have some way to pull out of that client what they're looking for. And then you can level set those expectations in your consultation. So you might find somebody who really just they would get tremendous benefits from 3 or 4 syringes. But you have to have that, or they might only need the one. You have to listen to what they're saying. Oftentimes you'll have, in the art of consultation, the trick is to, or the key concept is to listen and then say back to them what you've heard. Some tricks might be using like a sushi menu where you can show under eye bags or under eye deficit or low face deficit, or maybe they have small jowls that you can lift with cheek filler. But until you've heard what they've said, and then you kind of repeat it back to them, and you become then the expert in the room. Again, this is meant towards teaching the injectors that they need to be the expert in the room. You can't have a client come in and say, "I want 22 units. I've got $300 and I want 22 units." You have to understand what their concerns are. You'll be surprised how many people think they need under eye filler and they really just need more volume in their cheeks because it lessens that deficit appearance. It bugs them. And that's a tricky area, and you have to be a good skilled injector to use cannulas under the eye, etc. So I love the tools of the trade part and the art of the consultation because it teaches them the importance of listening and then having a solution for them. It might truly be that they need a facelift. I mean, are they smokers? What's their skin tone? How's their collagen? Have they gone through chemotherapy? How is their skin health? A lot of the modalities that we use from, ultrasound skin tightening or radio frequency skin tightening or the Cyton Halo BBL resurfacing, a lot of their concerns aren't just, I want a fuller lip and I want my Botox or I need my neuromodulators to slow down my frowning. They might truly need skin tightening or a resurfacing of the skin to help get off, age spots and other skin issues. That is all, in the end, a better reflection upon the provider because they've had the sense enough to listen to their concerns and suggest things. Even if you don't offer those modalities, you might suggest they find someone who can do those skin resurfacings and skin tightening for collagen stimulation. It's not just about dermal fillers and neuromodulators.
Yeah.
But I think listening and then being able to translate that into what you heard from the client.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. It's definitely the listening thing. I love that. Because that is so true. Like you have, and just like you said, you have to be the expert in the room. Like there are going to be patients that come in and they think it's one thing and really it's completely the other instead of doing what they want. And maybe what they want is going to make you more money, but it's not really going to address what the root causes of whatever they're trying to fix in the first place. Maybe that makes you less money in that initial visit. Who knows? But just recognizing that and using that as the driver forward. And obviously that goes down to a lot of things that need to be incorporated into the consultation, which photos, like before and after photos. Like, let's talk about that because that is something that is a very, I don't want to use the word simple, but it's not a difficult thing to implement in a practice, yet in the hundreds and hundreds of practices I've worked with over the years, I constantly see this as an area of improvement.
It is shockingly a simple directive like we do before and after photos, but I don't know why it is so hard to get it right. I think RX Photo is an excellent. There's some ways you can invest in a protocol or a habit of practice, I should say, that's going to guarantee you that you get the great quality photo. I used to use photos as a insurance purpose. I mean, for goodness sakes, when someone comes in and they do the before photo and then they say, you know, this, it didn't work, look, you have that photo to show it actually did work.
Yeah.
You know, you do look better. But, you know, and a thing that my trainer always says is, if you slice your face down the middle, we're sisters, not twins. Everybody has a little asymmetry and you don't see it when they look in the mirror, but they do see it in a photo. So photos are good for talking to your client and pointing out the benefits. I know one of my injectors, she takes a photo of the client and instead of handing them a mirror, she uses the photo. You'd be surprised the difference that a mirror is compared to a good quality facial photo. And as they're talking about the consultation, they're using that photo to show deficit, to show that they're uneven, that they might need more cheek filler on one side than the other. It's not always equal. It's not one syringe on both sides. And part of that consultation is learning that, you know, you can pepper throughout the treatment different areas with more or less dermal filler, if you will. But photos, I can't say it enough. Over the 10 years, I would say at one point I was excellent at it. And then as you get comfortable and you focus on other things, you look back and you realize, whoa, we're dropping the ball a little bit here on the photos. So I now have a dedicated room. I changed my lighting. It's not the biggest room, but it doesn't need to be, but we try to be really consistent. If the room has windows, and that's where you take your report because you have to, then that's where you take your afters because it just, the lighting changes it. You can toy with ring lights, overhead lights, have a light on your EMR. We use an EMR for all of our photos for HIPAA. But it just has to be very consistent. And it is a constant reminder to the provider, look at the last set of photos. So if they're coming in 2 months later or 2 weeks later, depending on the treatment you've done, pull up the last photo, look at it. Where was it? What was the lighting? Was their hair up or down? And mimic that look so you're not distracted with the results. When you're trying to show the before and afters, you're looking at the results, not the distractions of hair or jewelry. And it's a practice, it's a habit. You have to kind of really focus on making sure you're doing it right and that your staff is all on board that that's how you do it. So there's no deviation. It's tough. It's a tough practice. It's a simple solution.
It really is. It's a very simple solution. Like just like you said, RX Photos, an app that's out there. It's $200 a month. Anyone can go and get it. You can literally buy it on rxphoto.com. I'm biased because RX Photos, we own them, but it's the coolest freaking app ever. It makes everything so easy with the angles, and you can use it as a really great consultation tool and all these other things. But you hit on so many wonderful things. So first of all, the one thing I want to address, just because you brought up RX Photo, was HIPAA. Like, I still run into so many providers that are taking patient photos on a personal device and they're leaving them in their camera roll. Like,
Nope.
you do
Nope.
not do that. We have to abide by HIPAA. We are in a medical industry that is not HIPAA compliant in any way, shape, or form. So just some things, if anyone that's listening is doing that, I would advise that you stop that ASAP and invest in a HIPAA compliant avenue.
Absolutely. Even if you're taking with like a dedicated office cell phone and you have on the back of it office cell phone, not for personal use, it's still not HIPAA. You have to use an app that's HIPAA compliant. Yes, that'll hurt. You don't want that to happen.
Exactly. Like an injector leaves and they had photos on their phone, something happens. I mean, I've heard so many stories from my attorney friends that have been, I've just heard a lot. So I'm not going to go into that, but definitely great advice. That's a great takeaway. First of all, is just your photo process. HIPAA compliant, obviously bulletproof consents are another thing. So just make sure your consent form process is tightened up in the practice as well. I love that you said you have a dedicated room, because that's always what I advise our clients to do, is have a dedicated room. It doesn't need to be the biggest room in the space. It could be a corner of your practice. If you have a smaller space, just set it up, have your backgrounds, have your lighting, and that's where you're going to take the photos. And obviously, you said it, it has to be a dedicated process. So I'm a little curious what is the process at Utopia? Are you guys taking photos like at every single time a patient comes in, or do you only take photos like when there are final results after a series? I'm just curious, like, how often you guys are taking the photos.
So it depends on the service. It's a really good question, because first we want a photo of the person, period. So it's like when you go to, I don't know, the dentist or the doctor, it helps when we're having a conversation about a complication or a concern from a client that we have a picture of them. If you're doing laser hair removal on the legs, are you taking a picture of the person's face? Yes, one for their medical record that we keep in our EMR, but no, we're not necessarily taking photos for the progressive removal of the hair. But with dermal fillers, yes, it's every time. If they're going to walk into my injection room, we're doing photos that day.
Yeah.
Whether it's the day of the treatment or the follow-up, which is equally, if not more important than the day of, but they come hand in hand. But then when you get into like cool sculpting, skin tightening, really important, I think what we're focusing a lot on in this industry now is the neck. It's so funny. I mean, we're just going to keep on going down that whole body, aren't we? But the neck is tricky from a photo standpoint, and that's why it's really important, like you said, keep it super simple. Make that little corner of that room, or make that your Photoshop photo area, so that you're not challenged by what time of day. If it's a room with windows, try to find one without. But because shadows come and go, right? But it depends on the area of the treatment as to how often we're taking the photos. But I would say if you're walking into my injection room or rooms, your photos being taken. Now, on our consents, which you briefly touched on, consents are key. I mean, you have to have the consent. And on that, we have incorporated 3 options for photos. 1, you would have to have a photo for your record. And then 2, do you mind if we share these for training in-house only? And 3, would you consent to us using it for social media outside of the office? So it gives them, they know their photos being taken, because there's 3 boxes to check, versus just, do you mind if we use your photo for social media? I recommend the 3 options. And if you're doing an electronic medical record, they're just clicking the box as they go. So I don't know, I think the consents are key for use of photos, which can be frustrating for a lot of my newer injectors who are just driven by Instagram and social media. Like, I've interviewed injectors that are saying, I'm really working on it. I'm really working on it. And I think the industry is changing. I know other med spa owners that I talk with, that if they don't have a good, strong, I'm kind of jumping ship here, but regarding social media, but it says tie into photos. If they don't have a really strong presence on social media, they're not really considering them for employment. I'm the opposite of that. I don't think everybody in the world is driven by that my quality of work is so good. Look at all my photos. We'll do that for you. We have our own social media and we use your content as an injector. We were going to promote you from within. But when I look at it, there are so many photos on so many before and afters that I just say to myself, I wonder if they got all those consents. You know, it's not the easiest thing to get people to consent to their photos being shared. And it's out there. I always think about that. Like I have amazing before and afters, and they're friends of mine, and I'm begging them, Susan, this is the most amazing transformation. Can I please share this? And she's like, no way. But I do see that a lot of sharing is going on. So I would just advise people to make sure they're HIPAA compliant on social media and that you have those consents.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I want to ask a follow-up to this now, and I'm glad you brought this up. So because there are people out there that they freak out when you bring up the word photos, like we're going to take your photos, because some people are just they don't want their photos out there. In some cases, they can even they kind of get very uncomfortable knowing that their photos are being taken, period. So, and obviously this probably goes less with millennials, the younger cohort. They're, for the most part, they're a little bit more open. But because I hear this all the time, is a practice owner's like, well, the reason I don't have a lot of patient photos, like if I'm going through their gallery and I'm like, where are all your before and after photos? Well, most of my patients don't want their photos taken. Okay, so let's dive deeper into this now, because there are going to be people that have pushback. So I think then once that happens, it falls on the provider to effectively educate them on why the photos are necessary. Obviously not in like an aggressive way, but in a very understanding way, reinforcing the fact that, well, we're going to use them to monitor your skin journey and all of these things. So I'm curious how you guys in your practice respond to pushback, or if you have like talk tracks that you use to try to build value in the need for before and after photos with patients who kind of get uncomfortable with it at first.
It is a challenge because, to your point, most people are there to address something that they in their mind don't like, right? They don't like I wouldn't say they don't like the way they look. They're not liking the aging process. So the last thing you want to do is have someone take a picture of how they've aged compared to before they considered aesthetic treatments, right? We put it as, it's our policy. It's our medical director's policy. We have to have a photo for our record. We're not going to share it. We're not going to post it. It's in your app on your phone for you to view as well. And we have to make it a policy. Some of my providers are so uncomfortable when they get that pushback newer providers, so you have to walk them through it. Just explain that it's, and then step out of the room and come get me or come get a provider that's more comfortable with that dialogue to just say, I'm sorry, it's our medical director's requirement. We have to have just a basic photo. A lot of people will agree to it, especially when you say we're not only needing it because our medical director requires it, it's part of our policies, but we want to definitely have a timestamp of your, before we start this journey with you, especially new clients. Oftentimes they'll come to you with a concern that in the art of the consultation, you're addressing that concern, and you think as a provider you've addressed it very well. They go home, they talk to their friends, or at a bus stop, or they're somewhere, and their husband goes, "You spent how much money?" or whatever that scenario might be. Their partner says, "I don't think they really fixed that area of concern," and it puts doubt in their mind that they then are spending money to you as a provider, and you're not really addressing their concerns. Again, it goes back to the under eye. Really, you can solve a lot of under eye. People with unhappiness with their under eyes are solved easily with a very good volume in their cheeks. So those photos help protect that conversation. Like, yes, we did address it, and look, there is improvement. But I don't have a solid answer on how you convince them that we've got to have a photo, but we make it a policy. I mean, I'm trying to think of a doctor you can go to where maybe a dermatologist where they have to have a baseline, We need that photo for your record, just in, you know, I don't know if I would throw out there for HIPAA, but we do need to know, identify you as a record as a patient of ours, and this is how we do it.
Yeah.
Of course, the after photos are more required just because we've done work and we want to have the record that the work was done. I don't know, it's a challenging conversation, but the more you have it and the more you make it, just like where you take the photos, make it a practice, make it just, that's the steps on the way to that room. Here's the photo room. And on the, you know, when you sit down in the chair, and then when you come back, we need your post photos. A lot of people don't come for their post photos. So we make a note in our system that, like, let's say they come in every 4 months. If they're new to our practice, we require them to come back in 2 weeks, even if it's just neuromodulators. If you're going to get neurotoxins done, we need to see you in 2 weeks, because it helps educate us as to how you reacted to this to the Botox. Maybe you need 5 or 6 more units. We don't charge for those 5 or 6 more units because we want to adequately dose them so they're not later going, it didn't really work or didn't last as long. Maybe they thought they got 30 units at their previous practice when they really were getting 50. I don't know. So we do the complete assessment and treat them, and we want them back in 2 weeks if they're new to us, to give them more if they need more, right? Or if we, you know, need to drop a brow or whatever the touch up is. It's important as they become more, you know, long-standing clients with us. It's just more of a regular every 3 or 4 months. Then we're taking those photos every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I love that you guys do the touch-ups and then maybe they need a couple extra units, because that's a great way to ensure that people are coming back for that 2-week follow-up, even if it is just for neuromodulators. It is that right there. Like, honestly, I think that's super effective for practices that aren't doing that. Maybe the first initial appointment, we're injecting conservatively, and then this is our process. You're going to come back in 2 weeks because we strive for the natural approach. And if you need a couple extra units here and there, we're going to do that at no cost. And a lot of providers now don't even charge per unit. They charge per area and things like that. So it really depends how the practice is charging. But follow-up appointments are big. And that's a great way, as you mentioned, to get more before and after photos of tox patients, which, that's a basic treatment. But I mean, you can't have too many before and after photos.
You cannot. It is I agree with you, and you're an expert opinion on that, coming from your background. But no, it's so complicated to adequately dose someone you're just meeting. And if you're a new injector, it is the secret sauce. If you have them come back 2 weeks later because you're providing them that extra quality, that extra step of care, because we want it to be exactly the way they want it, maybe they don't need any more because they feel too frozen. Well, now you know, and you can chart accordingly that when they come in 3 or 4 months later, that 38 was too much, plus 30, or 65 was too much. I mean, come on, some people get 90. But if you're a new injector, if you're building your business, 2-week follow-ups are just, one, it keeps you busy. The more you see them, the more you get used to your spiel, how you're doing your consult, how you're doing your photos, speaking the speech that you need to have down when you're becoming the expert in the room. Make sure you book those 2 weeks. Get them on there. Even if you make 15-minute appointments because they don't need anything, it's that opportunity for you to really interact with them further. And it teaches you. I mean, it drives me nuts when everybody I talk to has gone to a weekend class and they never even, you know, did a follow-up Zoom meeting with the model and the trainer to see, like, okay, look what we did to this model. What would we do different? And then make those suggestions. Follow-ups are key, really key to becoming a good injector.
I totally agree. And follow-ups just beyond like the clinical side of things. I mean, they're just effective at increasing rebooking rates. You touched on building better relationships with your patients. The more patients are coming in to see you, the better relationship they're naturally going to build with you, which just increases, and it increases a lot of things. But just going back to like the follow-up appointment, maybe they come back and they're already so happy with you know, the results that they got. You can now use this opportunity. They're sitting in your chair already. They're in your practice as an upsell opportunity or a cross-sell opportunity, talking about their skin texture. Okay, now that we've, you know, softened a lot of these fine lines and wrinkles, let's talk about your skin texture. You know, in the initial treatment plan we built, like, we are suggesting these energy-based devices, laser treatments, medical grade skincare, whatever it may be. So that opportunity, those follow-ups just create extra opportunities, revenue opportunities, and patient result opportunities as well for the practice. So I love that you brought that up. And to something else I want to add too is in our country of the United States of America, we actually don't have apart from needing consents and things like this, we are able to take before and after photos of patients that give consent. Like if you, other countries, believe it or not, like Australia, Norway, things like that, there are actually so many regulations around before and after photos. I believe I ran into a provider from Norway and they were putting new regulation in place where they couldn't post before and after photos on social media, period. So like we live in a country where we actually have a lot of opportunities to use photos, like whereas aesthetic medicine, it's a global industry, but there's other countries. And I run into practice owners when I speak for MCAS and I'm in another country and I'm running into them. They're like, we actually can't even do this. You guys are so lucky. So like practices should be like, we have this opportunity in this country. Let's get really freaking good at our before and after photo process, because it's something that other countries in this world actually don't have the luxury of doing. So just on the before and after topic, I wanted to add that because it's something I've heard. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah, that would
wow.
make me nervous.
Yeah, exactly, from a consumer perspective. So I guess, yeah, in certain countries, I think you can use them in the practice. So like they can come in and look at photos, but they just can't be posting them online. And I'm not an expert on the regulations from a country standpoint. I just know in some of my recent international events I've been a part of, I've had conversations with people in other countries that were dealing with this. So just we're lucky to be in this country and we have this opportunity to grow our practice and utilize before and after photos. So let's not screw it up. Let's get really good at it because it's going to benefit the patients and it's going to benefit the providers and the practice at the end of the day as well. So first of all, Tracy, this a very quick conversation with you, but I don't want to end just yet because there's something else I want to touch on before we wind down. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Obviously, I definitely want to bring you back on because I feel like there's a million other things that we could go into as it relates to overall just like medical spa ownership from the business standpoint. So we'll definitely make that a priority to bring you back in 6 months or so because there's a million other things that when I was taking notes we could definitely dive into. So if we're going back to the Injector Academy. So obviously you guys launched this year in 2023 and a huge congrats to you. Have the utmost respect and give you all the credit in the world for doing this. Like what's next for you guys? Like any exciting things coming down the pipeline, given that we're, goodness gracious, almost in 2024.
I know. So we did a soft launch in 2023 because we just completed it. Once we got the accreditation, a lot that went into it with my platform where the educational content is housed. Our goal is, well, and as you know, the key is to maybe go into workshops maybe in 2024, but I'm on the fence about that because I really feel the platform that I have with this academy, if you can go log on and take your coursework and get your accreditation, after that, you stay on the same portal, but your login now takes you to further education. So I'm looking to partner with Allergan, Merz, Galderma. There's some amazing injectors out on YouTube that they're not on YouTube. They're injectors and they're educators, but they have a lot of really good content. I'm hoping to partner with some of those advanced providers to have further education available to our students, and students. Once they've graduated, they still have access to further their education and keep up with a lot of what currently isn't available to you if you're not actually working for a med spa, a plastic surgeon, or a derm. A lot of that video content, a lot of those webinars, a lot of that training is only available to you if you're actually employed. And I'm working with the manufacturers to say, let's help them learn more before, while they're looking for the jobs, or if they're not quite hired yet because they're learning, because it's not a quick, easy onboard. Once you've taken my course at the academy and then you do get hired, that training takes a while. Or even between my course and getting hired, you might need further education that's not available to you yet. So I'm trying to make that more user-friendly and more available to people who
Yeah.
are learning. I mean, gosh, Gain and AMI, they have the content out there that is so beautifully done, and they just need to share it more. So I don't know, there's a separation of church and state that comes into a lot of this, as you know, in our industry that's regulated for good reasons. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to attend to a couple more trade shows, get out there within more of the AMSPA, the bigger organizations, just to keep spreading the word about AIA. I'm not sure if you and we haven't talked about this yet, but we have a discount code for your listeners if they're wanting to take our coursework. So you can save 20% on any of my curriculum. And I can share that with you now, or you can put it in the podcast for the students.
Share it with us. Our listeners are probably like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. So the code is AIA Patient Now 20. So it's AIA Patient Now 20. And that'll take 20% off any of your curriculum that you choose. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share it. The more I get the more people take this course, it's just, I've gotten such validation from it. I appreciate your congratulatory statement, because I really did. I felt like I've created something that is so needed. There's always that find a hole and fill it kind of mentality from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And I guess I'm fully onboarded to be an entrepreneur, because I left the corporate financial security, if you will. In banking, you always get a lot of paid vacation and I just have had my nose to that grindstone for 10 years. And I'm happy to come back and talk to you further about anything. I mean, I can't believe it's been 10 years, but I've learned a lot in this industry, and I'm happy to share it, because we're growing. And there's no need for anyone out there to not be able to get into this industry if they want to be in it, in whatever avenue they're choosing, because it's growing, not shrinking. And it's just a matter of keeping everybody fully educated and onboarded with good practices and having safety protocols in place. And I think that this academy, Aesthetic Injector Academy, is helping fill that need that we, even if you've been injecting for 5 years, you still need your CEs. Why not take it in a course that is entertaining and involved in what you do for a living? So I'm very hopeful that this just continues to be as successful as it started. But in 2024, we're going to do our big media launch. You'll be hearing a lot more of us and getting us more out there in the public more. So fingers crossed.
I love it. It's so amazing to hear. I highly encourage you guys to reach out to Tracy, and the URL is aestheticinjectoracademy.com as well. I have it up on my other screen. And yeah, the discount code, I mean, first of all, thank you for that. I'm sure that is going to entice a lot of people who are already ready to pay full price.
Yeah, I was on the fence. It's the right thing to do. I mean, I really appreciate you having me on and hearing my story. And I really do hope that your listeners find value in not only what I'm offering, but certainly that savings. I mean, holidays are coming. So hopefully that will encourage someone to, I mean, my thought was always, as a business owner, there's a need for this. And let's say, 10% of the people take the course and go, yeah, maybe I'm not that interested in this. Isn't it better to find out now than when you do a whole career change that you're really not into dermal fillers and neuromodulators? So I'm hoping that the more education we put out there to the world, the better response we have with our level of skill set, and what we are providing as an industry overall.
Yeah, so many exciting things. I cannot wait to watch you guys progress and see all the exciting things coming up in 2024. So Tracy, first of all, thank you so much. This was a very fast conversation, even though it's been probably an hour now. I'm very grateful that Hillary introduced us, because just hearing this episode, hearing your story, your extensive background knowledge, I am honored to bring you back on in the next 6 months, and we can gauge kind of where the AIA is at then. But just thank you for your time. We're very grateful, and I'm confident our listeners will be reaching out to you, and I'm sure that there were so many takeaways that they got from this episode as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoys it. I appreciate the time.